really important. I remember my coach at the time, a guy called James, had said to me, he was like, anyone can be thin, but not anyone can do what you do. I think I've always said this. I always wish there was 36 hours in a day. Like, I want to be everyone and everything to everybody, right? Like, and kind of over the period I had left the mental health space in the past, nothing had really changed. You know, access to healthcare had gone down, quality of healthcare had gone down. And I was like, I think I want to take this more seriously. And over the last year, suddenly like reverted into like full blown athlete mode again.
Sophia, thanks for joining me on the show today.
Super excited to be here.
Brilliant. And now I appreciate, and you have mentioned that you are feeling a little bit under the weather, although I still suspect your sparkly personality will still shine through this conversation as we delve into a bit of your past from an athletic perspective, academic perspective, but also talk a bit about what you're up to now and sort of where you're heading, because I think there's so much for those listening and watching to learn from what you're going through.
Thank you. I think you expect too much of me, but I will bring as much sparkle as you want, and I will attempt to do my best. But we'll give it a go.
Too easy. That's good. I will. Well, listen. As I say to many, I think I'm going to enjoy our conversation. Hopefully, you do too, and that's all that really matters. And we'll take the rest from there. Now, for those who don't know you and are tuning in, really wanting to learn this lesson, can you just give us that quick intro, that little bit of spiel as to who you are and what you're up to?
Sure. I feel like I do this every day with pitching, so I'm going to make it a bit more interesting. People will probably know me as three things, hopefully four. Most people, when I was younger, would know me as a mental health campaigner, which I used to do in my teens, and I'm sure we'll get into that. But and also as a recovered anorexic as a kid. Other people will know me for sport, whether it's endurance running or currently high rocks. And then the rest of the people will know me in the tech world as a startup founder in the London ecosystem and also in the Middle East. I always say the fourth one is I hope people know me as like a good friend and a good member of the family, but that would only be the people that know me. So hopefully those four things.
Well, that is great. That's four wonderful things for us to actually unpack. And, perhaps I'm interested in starting from, you mentioned the sport person as well. I think that was perhaps number 3 in there. Talk to us a bit then about, the sport, that sort of athletic piece for you, certainly growing up.
Sure. I think we don't really know where it comes from because neither of my parents are particularly sporty. They're sporty enough. They're fit, but they're not great at sport. So I got into sport, I guess, probably around the age of 7. It's a long time ago. And it was actually I live in North London. It was at a year 2 Camden school's cross country race. And it was a 1 mile lap around this area called Parliament Hill. And I ended up winning it by half a lap. And everyone was like, "Oh, this girl can run." And then it was the same competition, but for swimming, and it was a 50-meter swim, and I ran by 25 meters, and everyone was like, "Oh, she can swim." Um, and any parent who can see their child being good at a sport automatically wants to see how good they are. So how far you can go. So I was a pretty competitive swimmer up until probably 13, like a national level swimmer. I did not like it. I think that's probably the most honest thing. I thought it was really boring looking at a pool. And also 5 a.m. starts when you're like 10 years old are just really tough. So we started transitioning me towards triathlon for a while. And kind of hitting around 14, 13, we realized I was just really good at running and wanted to run. And I think that was where my parents were like, this is the good one, and that she likes it and she's good at it. But I wasn't the best, I'd win a few like London championships, or I'd come like second in like south of England, but like I was not the best. There was just a girl consistently better than me, who's a good friend of mine called Bobby Clay. She was just better than me all the time.
Still fairly good though. I mean, still fairly good. I mean, you're winning, there's a lot of people in that south of England, type
Yeah, I know.
type event. But so
I
you, so
think
you, yeah,
I was running on my talent, not the fact that I was working particularly hard. I think that's
okay,
the difference.
yes, yeah.
I was still doing my netball, I was still doing my hockey at school, I was still going to like learn tap dance. Um,
Can you still
and
tap dance, Sophia?
absolutely not. If anyone who saw me at the wedding this weekend would say I cannot dance to save my life. But I try. I'm a
Yeah,
tryer. Um,
the effort is
and
that's what counts.
can I be honest? That is all that matters. Except with dancing, where you do need natural talent. I'm going to be honest. No amount of effort will ever make me a good dancer. Um, and kind of, I think it was around 14, 15, especially when you're young. Um, there is two things going on. You have particularly young women that feel like they need to be thinner anyway. And then you have endurance athletes, which have this kind of uneducated assumption that the lighter you are, the faster you go.
Mm,
That only really lasts a very narrow window. And as the extremist I am, I ended up developing very, very severe anorexia nervosa.
wow.
So I lost about 40% of my body weight within 8 months.
So
Um,
just tell me,
yeah.
Sophia, for those like me who don't really know, what's anorexia?
So anorexia is fundamentally an eating disorder. And eating disorders are anything from overeating to undereating, and mine was very much moving from restricted eating to lose weight to actually having a fear of food and a fear of eating.
Mhm.
And that's a combination of kind of like, psychological, you need a lot of therapy, but it's also weight. I never say the amount that I lost, I say around 40%. But I dropped out of all running for a year, did not touch any form of exercise. My life was do my GCSEs, gain the weight back,
Mhm.
um, and spent about 9 months eating about 6,000 calories a day to get it back. Um, yeah,
Okay.
hard,
Yeah.
hard. But interestingly, came back into sport fueling really well, um, and with a desire to be like, I'm going to treat my body the way it should be treated.
Yes.
Um, And that year coming back into the sport at 17, I was menstruating. That's another big thing. You lose your periods if you have an eating disorder. Um, I broke the national record for steeplechase. I ended up winning three English championships in a row. I ran for Great Britain, um, and suddenly was considered very good. And we were all a bit like, whoa, 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 we didn't actually think she was going to be that good.
Yeah.
Um, and then that's, I guess, where things really picked up. I got an athletic scholarship to the US,
Well,
and went from there.
yeah. I mean, look, it's a fascinating story already, just from that schoolgirl championship level, representing country. Clearly, representing the country, competing internationally. It, that that period where you said it's now a window of an eating disorder kicking in. You, you went over it, and I guess it's something well, as we'll go on to, I know it's something that you do speak about, and you say well, is it quite not? Is that normal? And is it specifically in girls or women where you tend to see that taking place?
Sadly, I think it has been very normalized in sport. Right. I think there's kind of two eating disorders, I guess, for me that co-occurred at the same time, which is like suddenly the name has gone, but compulsion with the idea of eating healthy.
Yeah,
Um, which is we see that in men a lot, right? And that manifests in different ways. So, we see it actually a lot of gym goers, steroid users, that
yeah,
it's a similar kind of eating disorder. And then there is anorexia, which is, you lose weight, you get osteoporosis. So my bones are slightly weaker than others, probably from manifestations of a long time ago.
hmm,
And then, your periods go, you start growing more hair on your arms. It is a lot more common than it should be. But I think the sports world is starting to catch up. I think we've seen a lot of changes on what recovery looks like. You know, the thinner you are, you're not going to be faster for that much longer. We're now getting tested for whether we have periods or not. But it is more common with women generally, anorexia nervosa.
and perhaps it's something we'll touch on a bit later when we talk about the focus, or some of the focuses, as you said, as a mental health advocate, what that looks like. I'm interested because you were going through therefore a lot of things. I know you took that step out of sports for a period. As perhaps a double question: how hard was it for you to come back from that period to both mentally and physically to then
Yeah.
start to achieving that, those highs then of, British championships and records.
Yeah, I think I always say to my parents, and I really believe this, I think I can be the best at everything, which works in my favor and doesn't, right? But I remember midway through my eating disorder, I got a letter from like British Athletics about junior world champs. Obviously, I was not going to go. I was not well. But I was suddenly like, what am I doing? Like you kind of take a step out by yourself, and I'm like, I've kind of lost everything. I'd lost my first boyfriend. Um, I was being difficult with my friends. I wasn't going out. I wasn't drinking. I was kind of studying for my GCSEs, but not at school. Um, and I was like, I have this exceptional life that I'm losing. And I think there was this kind of cognitive switch. Also, please know, I had so much therapy. This was not me alone. I had supportive parents, supportive friends,
Okay.
therapy. But I was like, I can be the best at gaining weight.
Mhm.
And it was tough, right? And I think, I remember making my dad when I was 15 go and get me a fish and chips. And my dad was like, I think this is a bit soon when you're scared of food to go
Yeah.
from like struggling to eat an apple to fish and chips. And I sat there with my hands like shaking, trying to eat it. And it was this kind of battle from kind of
Yeah.
can Sophia overtake the disorder? And it was really tough. It wasn't fun. I think I make it sound a lot easier than it was, partially because your brain blocks out trauma, right? I can't really remember it.
Hmm.
Um, but I think as I started to see that, when I die, this is such a weird thing to say, no one is going to have on my gravestone Sophia, who was a size 6 and thin, or, and that obviously that,
No,
and
probably
obviously
what.
an eating disorder is a lot more than that. It's a psychological disorder
Yeah.
and it goes way beyond that. But I think having that memory that, I hadn't really gained anything, I'd lost a lot, um, made me really like that thought of, the potential I had was really important. I remember my coach at the time, a guy called James, had said to me, he was like, anyone can be thin, but not anyone can do what you do. So every time I had these like, little fears or my way in hadn't gone the way I wanted or I saw the numbers going up, I was like, I'm actually getting closer to doing all those things that no one else can do.
I mean, that in itself is just really powerful. Just talking about that experience, and you mentioned there the support that you had from both counselling, but also that supportive parent or supportive family structure as well around you, which is great. You mentioned during that time, as you stepped away from sport, you did maintain a focus on your academic activities. So this is you at,
Yeah.
as you're saying, 15, 16, starting to push forward. How how important then? What what gave the importance to sort of academic performance as well?
Yeah. As I said, I like being the best at everything. Um, but not only that, like I come from a very academic family, like very. I'm the dumb one in the family, and that's saying something. My brother was a chess grandmaster at 8 years old. My mum speaks 8 languages. My dad's a doctor. Um, and I'm not, I always say this, I'm bright, but I work hard. My GCSEs, I was suddenly like, I'm going to study 12 hours a day. And my reward will be, I can go see my friends for 20 minutes and come back in. Um, and I love studying. I know I sound like such a loser, but I actually get such a thrill out of doing an exam. It's like the same, I do exactly the same ritual before an exam as I do before like a run. Like I'm like, okay, like before a race and an exam, I do the exact same thing. Um, I
What's your
get my
ritual?
highlighters out.
Yeah, I was going to say, what's
Oh,
this
it's so
ritual?
weird.
I'm going to get my
It's
highlighters out now.
Oh my God, it's the weirdest ritual and no one should do it. Before any race, and that includes the way I race now, I have to go to the bathroom 9 times. I don't actually go. I have to just sit in the bathroom and I have to do two Iranian and Persian. I have to do two Persian prayers, followed by the Lord's Prayer, which I used to do at school, but I'm not Christian. And then I'd have to do it like backwards. And I'd have to do it 9 times and then I'd have to race.
Okay.
Yeah, it makes absolutely no sense, but I started doing it when I was 15 and I won a race, and now I'm 28 and still doing it.
Hey, do you
But
know?
I'd approach exams the same way.
Yeah, I was going to say these rituals, if anything, what they do, they calm us down. They get us in the right flow state, right? So
Exactly. Yeah.
can't,
I like
can't,
routine. I think
yeah.
when you have ADHD, which I do, the best thing you can do is build in routine. And I'm like, I'm going to do the same thing in any stressful situation.
Yes, yeah, that's right. Complex, but I get it. That is that's that's
I would
pretty cool.
recommend someone else finds their own routine that isn't mine because mine's a
Yes,
bit
yeah,
weird.
yeah. The
But
takeaway is a routine, certainly at stressful situations, is a positive thing. Toilet 9 times, and we're going to talk. I'm just thinking. I'm just trying to think. You must have always had to be on track because, but some of the cross country. How do you? Anyway, doesn't matter. Maybe that's an off recording. Where are you going to the toilet 9 times?
behind a tree, behind a tree.
This is. There we go. We'll keep going. We'll keep going.
Sure.
Horse. Yeah. So academic was a strong focus for you. Definitely.
Yeah.
Again, I guess alongside you wanting to be that best, striving for excellence is something that certainly motivated you there.
Yeah.
So when you started to think, okay, where did you start to think this could get to? This athletics, where did you want it to go? What did being the best mean?
Yeah. Um, I've always said this, and I speak about this quite regularly. I don't believe me being my best means having one identity. So I never thought I would solely be an athlete. I still didn't think that precluded me from being the best, but I love learning. And I think when you stop learning, like life kind of ends. Um, and I think, I think it depends on how much you can do at once. But I was very much like, I had this multiple dream that I would go to the Olympics and I would also be a war correspondent in the Middle East. I always kind of thought I would do these two things at once. And I never really had to choose because I was so young. You just sacrifice other things, right? I wasn't, that's a lie. I was drinking, but I wasn't going out as much. My whole life has been a life of schedules because you
Mhm.
have to manage your time so well. But I always known, like, I was always going to go to university. That was not like, that is one of the biggest opportunities you have to socialize, I think, and like learn about other cultures and other people. Like, I was not going to give up everything for sport. And maybe that's why I didn't go to the Olympics. But I felt like I've lived a very well rounded life because of that.
Yes, you are living a very well-rounded life, and but sort of making some of those choices. So, what then? And perhaps leading question in this sense, but what made you think about the US college system as that next path for you?
I didn't. I hadn't. So I did my GCSEs. Obviously, they were pretty good. I did a lot of them. I did far too many. I had no time. I did 13. I think everyone else did like eight or
Wow.
nine. Yeah. I
Yeah.
did weird ones. I was like, I'm going to do drama outside of school. Yes, I will do further maths. Did my GCSEs. They were pretty good. And then after my A levels, me and my family decided it would be best that I deferred because I'd lived such a I was campaigning, I was running, I was social, I was very much A stars always, and they were like, she needs a break, she needs to go be fun. Um, so I ended up taking a gap year, but I actually let loose a bit. I got a misspelt tattoo. Um, I I lost my virginity. Sorry, I don't know if I can say that on here, but I
Yeah.
was drinking with random men on. I was drinking with random men on boats. I was getting tattoos and still running, but actually, I was just like very happy.
Yeah.
I lived in Australia, I lived in India, and midway through, I think it was coming to the end of my gap year, I was just really good at running. I don't know what happened. I got a 5K PB, I got a 10K PB, I got a 3K. It was just all like, it was a sign that when you're at your happiest, you perform the best.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter how you get there, but if you're happy, you're doing well. Um, and then I get this call from this man called Rob. Like, who the hell is Rob? I don't know. And he was like, "Hi, I'm calling to be your agent." And I was like, an agent for what? Like social media? I don't know. I had a big Instagram at the time. And he was like, "No, no, no. You're going to suddenly get a lot of messages from the US now." And I was like, "I know, but like, I want to go to Oxford. Like, I don't. The US wasn't really on the agenda. It's really expensive. My parents will not be paying 100 grand a year." Um, and he was like, "No, no, no. You're going to be my example of me starting my agency. I'm going to do it for you. We're gonna get all the, we're going to pick which ones you want to go. You're going to go and visit them for free." And I was like, "What the hell's going on?" Um, so I told my mum, I was like, "Yeah, we have a few more months of my gap here. Do you mind if we just take a month off and go and explore all these places? You don't have to pay." And my mum was like, this little 18-year-old, like talking to different schools. And she was like, "Yeah, yeah, of course." And I think my parents were kind of just like, she's gone weird again. She's gone rogue, but we'll let her do it.
Mental girl.
Um, I know. And you're allowed to pick 8 schools in the US for official visits. And I got offer, honestly, I got 200 like official offers. We picked Harvard, Yale, Stanford, Columbia, Duke, like Berkeley, UCLA. And I think deep down, my mum wanted me to go to Yale. My dad wanted me to go to Harvard. And I walked on the campus of Duke University, which is in North Carolina, uh, which is, I'd say, I'm obviously going to say it, but I think it's the best known for sports and academic. Um, and was just like, I went to a basketball game at Duke, and we are very known for basketball. And I just told my parents, I was like, I'm going here. And they were like, this is your first school. You might want to like look at Harvard. Went to Harvard, was like, I hate it. Went to Columbia, I was like, I hate it. And I just fell in love with this school,
Yeah,
and I was like, I'm going to do whatever I can to go to this university. And that's where I ended up.
that's a great story. And you had this other plan going to the US. Then how much? It wasn't in your plans. It wasn't in your original sort of desire. What did you once it became part of your plan? What did you hope to achieve by going to uni there or college in the US?
College, well done. Um, I think one, I think I just wanted something very different. Um, and I think for me, and this is where, there was a bit of a, I guess, a clash when I got there, was the US is probably the place I think is the best for like, well, like balanced. Like you get an incredible education that's very generalist. I am a generalist. I'm not good at one subject. You get to really engage with like American culture, like join a sorority, do all these weird parties and fields. But also you're kind of treated like an Olympic athlete, right? You have this like incredibly structured training from, mine was like 6:40 to 11 with a PT, I had massages every 2 days. Like my food was free. I was like, oh my God, I get to do everything and I get to live in like boiling hot weather the entire year round. Like it was just different. And I think I went to a very competitive school in London, and everyone kind of ended up going to great universities, but in the UK. Um, and I always feel like when one person goes that way, I have to go the other.
Hmm.
So I went the other way.
So what was that system like? What was it like for you in the US? That balance for you competing athletically, but then also the academic side. Did you feel you were being pushed on both avenues to be the
Yeah.
best?
Yeah. I don't know how well publicized it is, but I did leave the Duke track team after 2 years.
Hmm.
Me and my coach did not get on at
Yeah.
all. Potentially, I know I'm talented, and I think I potentially my desire to do other things and engage in uni life, including, the going out, didn't really align very well, and I was injured a lot. Um, but I still wouldn't have changed it. I think, look, I have always, my coach, Dan, who was with me for 10 years, has always said, like, I gave you the illusion of free choice when you trained, right? Which is what you do with someone like me. It's you make them feel like they have a choice in their everyday activities.
Yeah.
Actually, they don't. But he'd be like, remember, we're going to do a time trial tomorrow. So if you do go out, just be cool about it. And I'd be like, okay, that means I can do whatever I want. But then I get there and be like, I should probably only have one drink. Right. And I've kind of always been like, the illusion of free choice has always made me make the right decisions.
Hmm.
If your free choice is completely stripped from you, I rebel. Right. Like now I bet I barely drink. I don't drink at all because no one's telling me I can't. Um, Whereas this was very much you are not allowed to go out, you are not allowed to go have fun. And I was like, you've told me that, I'm going to post all over social media. Like I was a naughty kid. I was
Yeah.
a very naughty kid, and I think I can take responsibility for part of it.
Hmm.
Um, I also went in with a lot of pressure. I came in at number 2 in Europe in the 5K for
Yeah.
juniors. And suddenly the way I had trained had completely flipped. Um,
In what
and I
way?
loved it.
So, because
Um,
it's always this. I know this show. It's about that clarity, but it's about that career transition. And what I'm learning with the more people I speak to is life's transitions. They keep coming. It's not always at the end of something.
yeah,
It's just that shift from one to another. And here you're talking about the shift of, like you say, number 2 in Europe. UK based, competing in Europe, moving over then to the US. One in that college system, but then secondly, the competition and the training shifts. It sounds like, well, certainly over the 2 years, that wasn't a an awesome transition for you, and there was a conflict.
No. Yeah, I think I know myself very well. And I'm not someone who needs 100, 80 miles a week, 60 miles a week. My body doesn't like that. Um, my body needs sleep. I can't go to bed at 9 p.m., which means I generally don't like getting up at 5 to train. Whereas suddenly you're in this group where you're forced to do, wake up every morning at 6, but I'm like, once if I have a final, and I need to get that final done. Right? It doesn't really work. Like I need my sleep. I know if I'm tired, I don't really want to go to training. Right? I'd rather train in the afternoon, but you have no choice because you've decided to join this group.
Yeah.
Um, and that was really hard for me. And most people would adjust. And I was like, but why would I adjust when I do want to do extracurriculars? I want to write for school magazines. And
Yeah.
I think there's like a rigidity when it comes to training there, which I hadn't really experienced, which
Yeah.
definitely works for some people. And it just didn't work for me.
And
Um,
earlier you spoke about you never really saw yourself as just an athlete, or that an athlete was going to be the anchor to your identity.
yeah.
And what you're describing there is, well, it wasn't strong enough of a pull to one, shift your behaviors and shift what you were comfortable with. So, and especially because you like the academic side just as much as well. So when you were going through that time, what was the biggest struggle for you during that 2 year period?
Honestly, I was a mess for the first 2 years. The second 2 years were absolutely great. And I kept on running. Um, I think I've always said this. I always wish there were 36 hours in a day. Like, I want to be everyone and everything to everybody, right?
Yeah.
Like, I want to be able to go out and have fun. I want to be able to do as many extracurriculars. I love academics, but that doesn't make me feel like I'm a worse athlete or a less committed one because I still think I can do what everyone else does. Um, and I think, sometimes you're siloed into being like, and you need to be this one identity. And it was even the same social life, right? I actually wasn't the most committed member of my sorority because I'd be at training or,
Yeah.
so I think I was starting to be like, oh my God, I actually like, I've done too much here. Like, I just can't keep doing all of this. And I think, yeah, my third year, I was just like, I'm going to strip it all back. I'm just going to be a human who exists for a bit.
And
Quite nice.
how did you come to that decision?
Big falling out with my coach. My mum got cancer, and I was like, I should probably be a bit more. One identity I had lost was like I was not being a supportive daughter. Um, and I think I was starting to like, you hit 21 and you're kind of like, I'm an adult now. Maybe I should be more accountable for my decisions. And like, where do I think any of this is going?
Mm,
And at that point, obviously, I got it wrong because I'm now back as an athlete. At that point, I kind of thought athletics was kind of done for me.
mm. And so, but the outcome of that decision, you say, for the last 2 years in college, you enjoyed.
Yeah, because I wasn't on the team anymore. I
Yeah.
felt like I had full control over what I was doing. And look, I think a lot of us are people pleasers. So we kind of want to make sure we're making everyone happy. And I think those last 2 years were, how can I make Sophia happy? And like, what does the best version of me look like? And at that point in my time, it meant, I met a really nice boy, which I hadn't really done because I hadn't really given myself time to do that. I ended up dating him for a number of years. My friend group became a lot stronger. I was allowed to go on spring break. Um, and I was like, looking back, I'm like, I wasn't allowed back then.
Mm.
We weren't allowed full break, we weren't allowed spring break, we weren't allowed like Thanksgiving was 2 days. And I was like, I've got this amazing opportunity to be in the US. I want to use it. I want to go explore America. That doesn't mean, I'd still go on my 10-mile run in the morning.
Yeah.
Um, but I felt like that was an opportunity that was the opportunity I saw in America. It wasn't, great, I can go sit and foam roll for an hour.
That's the soundbite we're going to use. No,
Now I love it. Now I'm like, I literally
you
am waiting to see my physio. I know.
love the phone. I too. The massage gun sorts me out as well. IT bands, ridiculous.
I know.
I
I'm not good. Planes as well.
Yeah, I'm like, yeah. Well, I know why it's not like we invented them, but who invented IT bands? All they do is hurt. I don't know. Maybe it's
Yeah,
just
it's stupid. We should get rid of them like an
that,
appendix.
that's right. Exactly. Surely we can run without them.
Exactly.
Yeah, there we go. We'll keep that to ourselves. So interested then, college, coming out of college, you were running because you enjoyed it, all right, a little bit more so. What was next? What did you think you wanted to then start to achieve outside of this US college system? What was next for you?
Yeah. I've got to be honest, throughout college, I thought I wanted to be a journalist. So I studied Middle Eastern history as one major, policy journalism as another one, and then innovation and entrepreneurship for shits and giggles. Um, but I didn't know, the US college system, especially one like Duke, is like everyone is like finance, private equity, consulting. And none of those really, they were all very regimented, rule based things. And I was like, whoa, this is like, I did an internship in private equity. It was like, yeah, sure, I made a lot of money. Um, but I was like, this kind of sucks. I have a boss. I just like can't be told what to do. That is basically what I've learned. Um, and I had actually started a tech company in my last year of college.
Okay.
Um,
Doing what?
so random.
Yeah.
We were doing next generation natural language processing for publishing. Um, so random. But it was like fun. And, I was like, oh, maybe I can do this out of college. And everyone was like, this girl is so weird. Like, what's she doing? No job opportunities. And I ended up running it for 3 years out of college. Um, was it a success? No.
No.
Did I learn a lot? Yes. Did I get to live in Boston because my ex-boyfriend was working there? Yes. Like, I felt like it allowed me to dip my toes into like what tech could be like. Um, and that when I saw loads of people doing, the hours they do in investment banking, I was like, yeah, I kind of made the right decision. Um, so my mum's the founder as well. And I think there was very much, I read this book really, it's called The Psychology of Money. It's a very basic book on finance. But they always say, the most successful people are lucky, right? They have to be lucky in the sense that like Bill Gates, was it Bill Gates? Yeah, it was Bill Gates.
Yep.
Bill Gates there were 300 computers
Yeah.
when Bill Gates was in high school. And for some reason, he had a very, very interested teacher in computers. So that school had one computer, right? Which meant that he got to play around with computers way before anyone else did. And he always says, if that computer had not been there, Microsoft would not exist.
That's right.
There has
Yeah.
to be an element of luck, right? And I think, my luck was I had parents who were like, you want to build a company? Prove to us you can work, you can stay at home for free. We will support you. I had a vision of a woman who successfully had sold her tech company and was doing another one existed. And I think I was very lucky with the environment I was born in that I didn't think building successful tech companies were like out of reach for me.
No, no. I mean, you're right. And I know The Psychology of Money. I think it's actually a really good book. And like you say,
It's a good
so
book.
yeah, I think it's a great, I don't know, basic, almost, it shouldn't sound negative. It's a great foundation book for reading and understanding. And,
Absolutely.
and that's exactly right. So, um, I think, so with that, it sounds like for you then the next part or this exploration was about going and making your own luck. So coming in, starting a business, giving that a shot, getting to enjoy living in Boston, great city, and certainly at a time probably when it was a lot of the work would have finished. It was just a great city to start living in as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so, yeah,
Honestly, it was COVID. I will say it was COVID. So every
ah,
city you lived in kind of that. Just
it
going to
was
say that.
was kind of quieter than on the US, probably a bit more open than certainly here in Australia,
Yeah.
but
I
good
love
and
it.
bad. But then I guess during that period, so for me, it sounds like you were someone very young, female, in entrepreneurship, tech startup at that time. How easy was it for you to operate in that environment?
Oh, it fucking sucks. I could write a book on it. And it doesn't suck because men are shit. Like a lot of my biggest supporters are men. Um, but yeah, I felt like, look, the company I built before has given me, I don't want to say leverage, but the experience to do what I'm doing now and do it more successfully.
Yeah,
Um, and I never want to say like the odds are stacked against you because you can always like flip your odds, count some cards. I don't know. But I felt like you were consistently like having to think of ways to sell yourself in a way that like I don't think men have to do. I had never had a track record. And a
hmm
lot of men can raise money without track records. Actually my track record was insane. I was a pro athlete, young,
Yes. Yeah.
time management. Like I had everything that showed that I would be a good founder. I had that. I had, a 3.9 GPA from one of the best colleges in the US.
Yeah.
I was, pediatric advisor to the British government at 17. And that still didn't feel like enough.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, and this is
and
the
that
bit.
that was tough.
Yeah. Go on. Keep going.
Oh, I was just going to say, but ultimately, I think that one, rejection is great. I think rejection is redirection, and I really do believe that. But I also think I don't think I was building the right thing at the time. So, like, I do think everything kind of happened for a reason.
Hmm. Yeah. It's interesting. I was going to ask about then you been in that environment and how akin is it to being in this, competitive sporting environment where there literally is one winner and everyone is fighting to be that person because it's an entrepreneurial environment that you have stayed in and now moved
Yes.
into your current venture.
Um, yeah, I've always said this. I was never very like. I love individual sports. Like, I'm not the best team player. Um, but tech is a bit less like that, actually. You need to learn how to be a good boss. You need to know, ultimately other people's happiness comes before yours. And I truly do believe that. You want fellow founders around you. You want to be helping them fundraise because good energy comes back to you.
Mhm.
So I think, yeah, there are a lot of lessons I learned from sport which were very applicable to building what I'm building now. Um, and most of that is, you're not going to win every race. So how do you pick yourself up 100 times and be like, I still want to do this? Um, but ultimately, it felt like I was playing a different game.
As in, building a business is a different game to being
Yeah,
an athlete.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I
How
also
so?
think like when I mean, we'll get to what I'm doing now, but like I know where the marginal gains lie with sport and how to get better. I know what an injury looks like. I know how to like rehab, prehab. I know all of that stuff. Sometimes with like building a tech company, you don't really know, and you just have to keep figuring it out, right? And like I think uncertainty is something like you just have to learn to live with.
Yes.
Sport doesn't feel as uncertain.
Mhm. And so, how do you how do you deal with that? Someone like you say, someone who is very particular, that attention to detail, love that routine, love that process. How do you deal with that uncertainty in business that you didn't have as an athlete?
You learn to enjoy it. Like I know it sounds weird, but like you have to be like this as part of the process. And expect it, right? I think I have every day is going to be different. We've already pivoted 3 times with this company. Um, and I always think like the lost time fallacy doesn't really work with startups, right? It's like, we've been doing this one for 4 years. If we pivot again, it's not like the last 4 years meant nothing. They were just lessons. And I think that's something very different to the way that I treated sport was like, how the fuck did I lose this race? I did everything right.
Yeah. So what? So let's come on to where you are today, and
So
what was the inspiration behind where you are today, pivots and included, and then share with me. Give us that pitch about what you are doing today.
sure. Do we want the sports side or do we want the tech side? Because currently I'm back on the
What?
pro athlete side as well.
That's
So
right. Let's give us the tech side first.
sure. Um, so I work in mental health again, which was probably more of a founder market fit than the last one. Um, but the rationale behind it was a few years ago I was diagnosed with ADHD. It was around the time of the breakup of the boy that I had just described. And everything felt really out of control. Service provisions weren't great. Um, and kind of over the period I had left the mental health space in the past, nothing had really changed. Access to healthcare had gone down, quality of healthcare had gone down, particularly in mental health and neurodevelopment. And children, pediatrics, were just like the most ignored space ever. We build wish-washy games for kids to like teach them things, but actually, like, there are 250,000 people on an autism wait list right now in the UK. Building them a fucking game isn't going to change anything. Um, so around that time, this accelerator called Entrepreneur First, which are probably the best in the UK, had reached out to me. We're like, we think you should come in and build a mental health company. And that was one day after I decided to leave the last one. And I was like, well, that was a quick sabbatical. I guess I'm going again. And that's what I mean about like the unexpectedness. It's like if you hold yourself to, I actually need a break, I would have never had the opportunity that I'm now 4 years down the line if I hadn't accepted that. Um, so what Kanjo does now, and I'm blessed with a team upstairs. I'm currently in the boardroom. We build kind of predictive models on mental health care. So we look at genetics, environmental, neonatal, so what happens during the mother during pregnancy. And we build models that look at risk prediction and then actually deliver care based off that that's personalized. And it's fun. It's really hard. It's not always fun. Most of it sucks. Um, but you feel like you're the right person to be doing this and you're making a difference and we're making money and that hadn't really happened before.
Mm. How did you know when you got that call the day after you'd left the company? How did you know that you were the right person to do this?
Um, I always have this thing. I'm going to tell you what I would normally tell people and say I didn't know. Um, and I always say that before I win a race. I'm like, I didn't know I was going to win. But deep down, I have a belief that if someone gives me an opportunity, I'm going to take it. I mean, if you look at my Instagram bio, I need to remember what I wrote, but I actually read it in a book. My Instagram bio says a very serious possibilist, which basically means that like I get really excited by the like idea of possibility. And I take it seriously. And I'm like, if there is a possibility of me being able to do this well, I'm going to give it a go.
And how much of your, I guess, look, your experiences as a child, and and when you were as a mental health advocate as a youngster, how much of that have you brought with you into your
A
company?
lot, a lot. I think people should build for the problems they've experienced, number one. I think that's very important. Um, and I think empathy as well. I am not, sorry, I always refer to books when I say things. But there is an amazing, he's probably like the biggest like advertising guru in the world called Rory Sutherland. You probably listened or read into. And he read this amazing book called Alchemy, on like selling things. Um, and he kind of describes the idea of a house, right? And a house is one of the most personal, high touch purchases you're going to make. You're going to live in that. You're going to raise your kids. You're never going to buy a house if someone emails you about a house. You're going to go want to see it. You're going to want to talk to the estate agent. You're going to want to talk to the owners. And I feel like what we're doing is very similar, right? It has to be super high touch, super personalized. You're helping a parent deal with their kids' health and their lifelong outcomes. Um, and you cannot do that without empathy. And I think having the experience I had in the past has allowed me to empathize, and almost put that on a similar level to my actual job, which is my job is to return money to make returns for investors, right? Like that is fundamentally a founder's job is you raise venture funding, let's get the fantastic return. Um, right. And that might have made us slightly less successful. Sometimes we say no to people because we're like, we actually can't deal with your child and I don't want to lie to you. Um, but I think leading with empathy is what has been told you should not traditionally do in, growth stage startups. But that is the way I've chosen to do my job.
That's fascinating. I do have another question to ask you, but talking about this leading with empathy, empathy is one of my core values, but also then the values that I bring into Second Wind as well as an organization. And I guess the bit I've always struggled with is I've initially I was like, oh, I'm a startup, I'm going to build Second Wind, I'm going to do X, Y, Z. And in the end, I pulled that back, and you tapped on it there because of empathy. And I couldn't figure out, certainly not quickly enough, how by continuing to be empathetic, I could also get the right types of return to call myself a startup. Be a business, absolutely right. But
Yeah.
startup and that exponential growth, I was just like, I don't know if I can do that. There's probably others thinking, how do you get your head around being this empathetic leader, yet still being able to drive the right type of return?
Um, One, I think people have got it wrong. I'm always going to say that. Like, I don't think there is a right way to build a business. I look at my mum, who is running a larger business than I am. She never raised lunch funding. She didn't need to, right? She has never taken a cent. She probably had a one angel investment at the beginning, and she does not need to do crazy growth, but accidentally has. You know, she manages her own time. And success looks differently to different people. And like one thing I hope I've done is that every person who has worked here, even if they've been fired, has said like, this was a safe space to work. I learned something. Well, they helped me get my next job. Because ultimately that will be the reason someone else comes and joins. Um, and when we look at like the biggest causes for failures in startup, it's running out of money is one, the team not really gelling, one person leaving.
Yeah.
Um, right. Like if you keep going, eventually you'll find product market fit if you're malleable enough.
Hmm.
Um, but for me, it's kind of like, I need to treat, with my investors, I want to build those relationships and I want to invest in those relationships. With my team, I want to like invest in those as well. Do I know everything that's going on in Gen AI? No, because fundamentally, I don't give a fuck.
No, you know, I
I
don't know
don't
if
care.
anyone, no, no one. I don't know if anyone truly knows, but we'll all follow it as much as we can. Um, you
Exactly.
mentioned one thing there about something like solving the problems that you've got the experience in, or solve the problems that you've got that lived experience. Talk to me a bit about that belief.
Um, with what I'm doing now, or just in general.
Yeah, yeah, linked into what you're doing now, because I know there's a lot of athletes who I work with, actually a lot of executives who I help at this shift in their career path as well, and they always come with this view on, well, I don't know what to do, I don't know how I can become this entrepreneur and start moving into something else, and so that's it's just that little nugget. So I'm just interested in your perspective on that.
Yeah, I don't look, I think there's multiple things. I think one, athletes kind of have to understand they've already in a really good position to start a company just by what they've done. Right. And that doesn't like the person that you are having to go through the trials and tribulations of being an athlete already sets you up pretty fucking well. The second is not all athletes need to build companies. Number two. Number three, not all athletes need to build sports companies. I think is really important. I think we learn a lot. We learn a lot of lessons throughout our lives that don't completely align with our identity. Like it might have been that I wanted to go build a cancer therapeutics company because my mum had cancer. um, we have a lot more experience that we are aware of that doesn't involve like the things that we do and are more related to the person that we are. Am I the right person to build a cancer therapeutics company? Absolutely not. But would I give it a go? Yes. Um, and I think like kind of where I kind of go is like just keep like when you're older, what are the kind of problems that you kind of really want to what are the changes you want to see in the world? And like what are the biggest problems you notice every day? Um, and I've thought of so many weird ones throughout throughout my time. Like I have a list of like here are all the random things I would like to build. Actually, the first one ever ended up being what the guys at Runner built. Right? I wish I had done that. I wish I'd built a running app, but I didn't. Um, but life is really long, and you have a lot of opportunity. Like I think just like make as many mistakes as possible is like the biggest advice I have to anyone wanting to give it a go.
Yeah, and look, and I think with that, making that advice, making mistakes, but going on. But even as you said there, it's not just what you've done, but it's who you want to be. And
Yeah,
certainly for those who are athletes listening, they've already got the traits, they've done the hard work, and the experiences that they've had, as you've described, even for yourself, already makes this great, I don't know, container or yeah, container of ideas to
sure.
go and sort of play with.
Yeah, and I think the other big one would be like lose your fucking ego.
Mhm. Yes.
Right. I think that's like the biggest lesson I've learned to have is like, I wouldn't say I'm a narcissist. That's wrong. But I do have a high degree of self exceptionalism.
Mhm.
And I own that because that's the reason I'm good at everything I do.
Yeah.
Um, but your ego is going to be driven to the floor.
Mhm.
You're not going to be winning medals. There's going to be no one telling you you're doing well. Like, you're not going to have the experience you had as an athlete when you were really good. You're going to have the experience of being an athlete that was shit and then getting good.
Yeah.
And
Which
then
is
being like, how do I have this weird rebirth?
well, and so on that, and so I'm going to ask for you. Then you kind of have this balance, perhaps, because not only are you a founder and running this business, but then you're also a semi-professional athlete. now,
Yes.
which means you get that little burst of ego that comes through. So talk to me. Well, what is a semi-professional in this instance, and
Yeah.
what are you doing?
Yeah, it's so funny how everyone thought I was done wrong. I am never done. A couple of years ago, I think it was it was last year. I was still running, and a group of my American friends and I all who did college athletics in various things. So some are lacrosse, some are whatever. We were like, we should start a running group and call it the Retired Athletes Group. Um, right, and it was basically like a group that went for runs and then went drinking. Um, and I started to fall in love with running again. Like I really did. I was like, fuck me, I love getting better. I'm seeing the marginal gains again. And I felt like a part of my identity was just so honored again. Like my inner child was so happy. Um, and then I messaged my coach, my old coach that I trained with when I was a kid. And I was like, I think I want to start training again. And he was like, oh, are you sure about this? And I was like, yeah, I think it's time. So I ended up getting back in the gym with him. He was a strength and conditioning coach in the GB Olympic team. And we were getting there. It was fun. And then last year in May or April, I paced the Paris Marathon for a friend. And what I didn't realize was I had partially torn my Achilles. I had bone fluid in I fluid in my bone marrow. Like I had whatever I'd done, I completely
Mhm.
fucked up my foot. And there's an amazing sports doctor called Noel Pollock who was like, you're not running for 6 months. And I was like, well, that was my dream gone pretty quickly. I go back into the gym and I'm like, cool, I can lift, which I could. And there is this kind of like very unfit looking PT in the gym at the time. And I could overhear him talking about this thing called high rocks. Um, and my coach just says to me, he was like listening and he was like, I feel like you'd be quite good at that. And then this guy goes, nah, 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 she's not built for it. She's definitely not strong. She kind of just looks like an endurance runner. And my fuck, if a short, unfit man tells me I'm not going to be good at something, there is nothing more like triggering than wanting to be good at it. And I was like, you know what? Fuck this prick. I'm going to go and learn how to do a high rocks. So I looked at my coach and I was like, I know I shouldn't run, but there is a high rocks in a month. Am I just allowed to run on the day? Like I won't do any running. I'll train on the ergs, but sorry. Um, is it possible that I could like learn to, can I just give it a go? And he was like, sure. When's the next one? And I was like, Gdansk in Poland. And he was like, okay. Um, so I ended up going to Gdansk. No idea what high rock was. Did it, won it.
Okay.
Then the week later went to World Champs and came like it wasn't great. It was like 15th in the world on this random sport. Um, and I was like, I think I want to take this more seriously. Um, and over the last year, suddenly like reverted into like full blown athlete mode again. I ended up breaking a world record in February, doing some really cool work with Nike. I have an amazing agents. My agents are back and are amazing. Um, and my identity feels very like full from it. I do have a new coach now called George who works in High Rocks. Um, and yeah, it's a tough one. I guess I love the fact I say semi-professional because I still have a job,
Yeah.
right? Like that's
Mm.
kind of the reason I say it. But like ultimately, this could be my job. I'm one of the best in the world. I love it.
Yeah.
Um, but
How are you finding that balance? How are you finding the
now
balance?
I'm struggling now. Like you'll probably see some changes in my life pretty soon. I don't know which way it's going to go. In the sense that like I'm on my off season at the moment. And I was just like, shit, I didn't realize I'd actually missed out on quite a lot over the last year. Like I went to a friend's wedding, I drank, and I was like, well, I don't feel guilt about this. This is kind of nice. Um, and I think I'm someone who is so extreme that I either go like full blown, like I'm not going to drink, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, I'm going to do like I'm very like that. And same with work, but actually, I travel to the Middle East a lot for work, and I'd be getting off a plane, then racing in Chicago, then doing this and doing that. And sustainability is something we don't really think about that much when it comes to
Yeah.
work life balance. And you know, my journey is going to look very different to other people's, and I think for me, it's now figuring out, maybe I can't work 80 hours a week and train 20 hours a week. Like, what will the next step look like for me?
Mm. Yeah. Definitely a watch this space. And so, look, Sophia, last question really for me. I certainly appreciate your time. You look at athletes coming through behind you who are, look, I guess on one are thinking about this entrepreneurial path, they're trying to figure out, can I make this work and this balance? Based on your experience, what advice or guidance would you give to them?
Oh, but you are asking the wrong person. One, I'm still figuring it out. Two, I think everyone else will figure out, like, you kind of only figure it out when you've got it wrong. Um, that's like a really weird way of saying it, but you don't realize you've got it wrong until you have. Um, I think the one thing I will say about balance is having multiple identities is a blessing and a curse, right? Because you're having to deal with all these identities, but also if you lose one, you have one to fall back on. When I get injured, there is something else. If we can't fundraise, I can always go for a run. Um, but ultimately, it's like, how much do you want to honor each of them, and like which ones do you want to give more weight to? And over the last, I have given up a lot on the, romantic side because I've been so busy. So at the moment, I'm like, maybe it is time for me to reinvest in, Sophia, who eventually down the line wants to be a mum, or Sophia, who actually needs to feel secure in a relationship or be supported, because currently I feel very self supported. And that is so okay, just because I can speak on panels and, speak on panels all around the world, or, I can get a gold medal in all these events, doesn't mean I don't want to honor the other parts.
Sophia, thanks for being honest. Really, truly appreciate you just sharing your perspective and your story. And it's going to help so many people. And thanks again.
Of course. Thank you for having me.